Benny Tetteh-Lartey. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I am a carpenter cabinet maker as well.
Do you want to start by talking about your childhood, your background a little bit?
Well, I grew up in Edinburgh, West Mains Road, and I'm from a family of 7. I've got 6 brothers and sisters. We went to Rudolf Steiner's school, which is an alternative school. We used to get told that it's the school where you can do anything you like. It was an alternative way of being educated, where you had a kind of more wholesome education. You didn't just get directed for exam results, but you got to know the full subjects. You would do projects which would take place in the first lesson of the day, which was called main lesson. You would get a general knowledge of a subject, and you would work on it for anything between 2 and 4 weeks. So you'd get an in-depth introduction to it. So we do things like in the lower school, which is known as primary in another language. You would do things like house building or, botany. We wouldn't call it botany though. I think it was just plants or something. But you'd get to know a lot about that. And then in the upper school, that's when you would focus on exams, and that was more like secondary, but it was like all the way through the 12 years. So that's where we went.
I know your father was Ghanaian?
He came from Ghana. He came over in 1958 and met my mum in Edinburgh. She came from Inverness. They met in Edinburgh. She came to art college. He was studying in Edinburgh. And that was it, yeah. They moved in together in Mayfield. In fact, no, before Mayfield they were in Glenorchy Terrace in Newington, Edinburgh.
Okay. And what was your dad doing?
A dentist, dental surgeon.
Right.
So, yeah, and none of us took after him. We didn't really want to look in mouths.
Fair enough. So, obviously your father moved to Scotland. Do you know why he came to Scotland, or what inspired him to come here?
Well, more opportunity, I guess, when you're coming from a third world country. Although Ghana was, there was more advances in Ghana than there are in other African countries, but it was an opportunity for him, that a lot of people wouldn't have, certainly not in Ghana. So he felt very privileged to come here and study and get himself a decent job and have a big family. So, yeah.
And what was it like growing up in kind of a mixed race family?
Well, at first I didn't really, none of us really kind of noticed it in the house. It was obviously when you started going out, you'd get comments. So you kind of grew a bit of a thick skin. But most of the comments, I wouldn't call them racist. They were just kind of more ignorance or curiosity, because there aren't, at the time, certainly there weren't many black faces around Edinburgh. So, it was more curiosity, and I realised that from an earlier age, people are people. So, yeah, it was colourful.
And how do you feel can you describe your sort of early social experience outside of school?
Outside of school?
Yeah.
Well, football, I wasn't great at football, but in the street. Like, there was a neighbourhood, we were on West Mains Road, which was the front street. We lived in a fairly big house, but there was a lot of us, 9 of us, so it was kind of quite full. But I used to make friends with a lot of people from round the back. We called it round the back. It was the council estate round the back. And we'd go and play football, tennis and cricket in the university grounds, which were across the road. It's now King's Buildings. There used to be a lot of space, where there was grassland and also just rubble, because there was a lot of buildings that weren't there at the time. So we'd make use of it, and we'd get chased by the park patrol. But I've always made friends really easily with people, no matter what. I just like having fun. I've always liked having fun, so I've not really seen it as a big problem. Occasionally it's been a problem, but I've never focused on it. I think the more you focus on something like that, the bigger you make it. So not for me. I just wanted to have fun, and I've always, like I say, made friends easily. I intend to keep on doing so.
Did you grow up in kind of with these two different cultures kind of mixing?
Yeah, that was a good thing, and that's really helped my music a lot. Although sometimes I felt, in my 20s, I was feeling that maybe I would have been better to have had just one particular style, because I've had so many styles of music that I love, and whenever I come up with a song or an idea, I don't know what it's going to be, whether it's going to have an African tinge to it, or if it's going to be folky, or if it's going to be rocky, or if it's going to be reggae, because I love music, full stop. So it doesn't really matter, it just comes out as it comes out. But when you're trying to make an album like what I'm trying to do now, that's when it can be a bit tricky, because in order to sell it, you want to have a genre that can be pigeonholed. I saw Oscar Peterson when I was about 9 years old at the Usher Hall. I can't remember what year, it was in the 70s some point, yeah. Brilliant. That was a great experience. We saw what they called now, Black Mikado, which was, we used to see a lot of the really big musical theatre type things to come out of Africa in the 70s. They would come to the Edinburgh Festival, so we would always go and see what was new there, whether it was percussion, drumming, or like I say, musical. The Black Mikado was one that I remember when I was about, 4. And then there was a group called Achiltibuie. I don't know if you know them, which, well, you can look up on YouTube, Achiltibuie. They've changed, the lineup's changed obviously, because I think a lot of the original members must have died off by now. But there was a lot of that kind of thing going on. We'd go to the theatre, and my mother introduced the Corries to me, Scottish love songs by the Corries. I particularly like Roy Williamson, Flower Scotland author, and his music, and that's where this instrument came from. That's where the idea for the combitar came. I've made my version of that. He made 2 combolins for the Corries to do their music on. So yeah, listening to both of these types of music while I've been growing up has made for an interesting mix of when I write my own material. Influences, yeah.
And did you, in the kind of household, did you notice any kind of different styles of raising kids, or just having a home? Do you think might have been influenced by the different cultures? Or
with my dad, anything went, anything goes. And with my mum, it was like, well, you've got to be careful, because you want to ask for something, you can check it out with her. She'll say no, and then you'd ask, Papa, and most likely it was yes. And then it was a bit of a conflict that would go on. So, but if my mum was out and he had to babysit, it was a different person. He was very strict. He wouldn't get away with any nonsense. So, yeah, confused. Maybe.
And did you ever go to Ghana?
I haven't been to Ghana. No, it's a bit of a sore point, because I feel I should have gone a long time ago. And I have a lovely cousin down in London who keeps on saying that, she'll, when you're ready to go, I'll go with you. So yeah, one day soon, hopefully.
Right. And did you ever meet your Ghanaian grandparents or extended family?
My grandfather, I didn't. He died, must have been in 1977. My uncles and aunties, I've got family in London. And my father was the only one of the family who came up this far north. So yeah, I've got connections, and it's really good having the connections, so that I can convey certain things to my children and stuff.
Sure. Would you say there's anything that was particularly difficult when you were growing up?
Growing up?
Yeah.
Yeah, growing up was difficult. that was the main thing. Still not managed that one. But I hear when you reach a certain age, you don't have to grow up anymore.
Right.
So, school I found tricky. Sometimes I was a bit of a rebel, and I was always getting myself in trouble. I couldn't really blend in.
Right.
That was my trouble. So if there was a group of us up to no good, I was always named as the ringleader.
Right.
So I thought it was a bit unfair. But I did like the ethos of the school. It was a great way of educating yourself, and I actually used to look forward to going to school. I skived very little. Occasionally I did when I felt a bit pressure from, maybe there was a bit of angst going on with friend groups. But I think that's all part and parcel of it. But
did your brother and sisters all go to the same school?
Yeah, we all went to Steiner's, yeah. So, yeah, that's my father had a hard time with the fees, I remember him constantly, your fees, and it was like a weight on our shoulders sometimes, but he did what he thought was right. Maybe looking back, we could have gone to any school and been fine. I think my mum thought she was maybe protecting us a bit by putting us in a private school, because we were like pioneering mixed race family, but I don't think it would have been necessary. But yeah, they did what they thought was right. Yeah.
And were there anything that was particularly enjoyable, particularly memorable?
About the school.
Or just about growing up?
Well, I loved the trips that we used, because the school, Rudolf Steiner, it's a German school. When you reached class 8, which was age of about 13, just before you went into the upper school, which is like secondary school, you'd go on a class exchange. And we went to Überlingen in South Germany, and we visited Switzerland, the Rhine Falls. We toured all over the place. It was school, but it was like an amazing 7-week trip. That is the best, just the best memory that I've got. All the little things, climbing these mountains in the Alps. You know, you were kind of plodding along, thinking, "Are we nearly there yet?" And it was like, at the time you were like that, but then you'd get to the top and you're like, "Oh, this is actually pretty good." And yeah, I always look back on that thinking that was just invaluable. But at the time you don't always know it, you know, it's not always clear.
Can you tell us a bit about what inspired you to get into music and into woodwork? Was there any particular thing, or was it sort of something that you'd always...
The music's been something that I've never really noticed doing. It's always been there. I've always played. Since the first I remember playing the piano was when my mum and dad, they were playing a boogie woogie, and my father, he did the bass notes, and my mum did the high bit. And I remember I must have just been able to look over at the keyboard, and I could just see what his hands were doing, and I was fascinated by it and thought, oh yeah. So bass, funny it being the bass that was fascinating, because later on I played bass guitar. But yeah, it's not been something that I decided I'm going to do music. I just always have done it. I used to get piano lessons, but I would have preferred to have learned how to write music at the time, because at the time we were learning, you always had to read a piece and play it, and I just didn't find that very exciting or inspiring. The woodwork, I enjoyed woodwork at school, but not especially. I don't know how it just seemed to be, yeah, it must have been something that I did enjoy, but I don't remember thinking, right, I'm doing woodwork now. Yeah. But I guess being self-employed, it was something that I found useful, because I've got my own business, I'm my own boss. I can do my own hours of work, which means I can tie the music in. Whenever I've been in employment, it's been a tricky one, because if I got an idea for a song, well, the urge is very strong to work on it, and if you're behind a desk or whatever, you can't really do that. I've tried, and I always thought that, you know, if I stay in employment more than 2-3 years, I'm going to get fired. And I knew I would if I tried to do it any longer, because the music just took over. So I can't really do that. I realised that kind of in my mid-30s, I think, that self-employment was the best thing for me.
Sure. Yeah. And was music a big thing in your family?
My younger brother Josh was really good on the violin, but he never took it any further. He played very confidently and could bow, you know, because my younger sister Saskia, she used to get violin lessons, but I mean, bless her, I love her to bits, but it just didn't, it sounded like a cat that was kind of crying out. It wasn't pleasant to hear. Josh would practice, and although he was practicing, maybe not hitting all the notes, it sounded smoother and really good. I'm just wondering if this bit should be cut. Not play it to her. My two brothers, Chris and Nicky, third brother, did piano lessons for a while, but they didn't continue it, although Nicky did trumpet later on, and he got pretty good at it. But yeah, I don't know, it's kind of my mum and my father, they both... My dad, he used to like singing. He liked church singing, you know, choir thing. He would always go whoa, 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 with the bass notes. My mum, she's a singer as well, but quite shy. I mean, not a performer really, unless she's knocked back a few. So
I guess in your both woodwork and in your music, would you say that the influences, you know, from Scotland and from Africa, or is there one that's stronger than the other?
Not really, because I mean, well, the first album I did, it was kind of rock, and there was a bit of reggae, and then there was a bit of folk sort of stuck on at the end. Very eclectic. The second one I did, I thought I'm going to try and combine them and make it more the same, and it didn't really work. I think, well, there's kind of folky, there's a lot of string, you know, acoustic instruments, whether it be acoustic guitar or the comb guitar, a lot of natural sounds, very little electric sort of well, there's keyboard, there's some keyboard, but very little electric guitar kind of sounds. The album that I'm working on at the moment, I started off thinking, right, I'm going to do a reggae album because I love reggae music. And then as I started to get inspired, totally different things would happen. You know, I'd be doing music that I can only describe as Baltic kind of sounding, or Russian even. Mm-hmm. I could give you an example, just a wee short example in a minute. But it's just like, I remember playing and thinking this, and then sort of trying to identify it. Maybe you shouldn't do that, but I did because it sounded quite different. So yeah, it's not something that I consciously think about, because whenever I've had tried to consciously think about it, I would just cock it up.
And did I guess, you make a lot of your own instruments. Was that something that started you in woodwork, or did the woodwork kind of come first and then you thought, I can make my own instruments?
I think the woodwork was there first, floor laying and making doors and gates and whatnot. And the instrument, well, having said that, this instrument here, mm-hmm. that was made, I made it about 20 years ago, from a single block of wood that was bought at Lady Lawson's Timber. Mm-hmm. And I had a jigsaw. I just drew a picture of the shape that I imagined and then jigsawed it out. It's all one piece. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I'll just buy the components and put the strings on. And it sounded really good. And I played it at gigs. I used to play where I did my apprentice was with a band called Makosa. Mm-hmm. You know Makosa?
It rings a bell.
Very, very. If you want to have a great time, Makosa's the band to go to. My first gig with them was at the Jailhouse, which is now, I think it changed names to the venue, Carlton Road, mm-hmm. down Edinburgh. Used to play there a lot. Used to watch Makosa. Brilliant time. Peter Champon, he's still going. He'll never stop. He'll just keep on. He'll probably die on stage. So they gave me the opener to play the bass with them, and then I started doing backing vocals, and I kind of got used to being on stage because it wasn't natural to me from the beginning. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a natural performer, musician, yeah, and arranger, creator, songwriter, composer, yes, since I was wee. But not performer. That's taken a little bit of work, because I'm a shy guy, really.
I know some of your music has been Scottish folk songs as well, but you're kind of on twist to them as well.
Well, I've been doing recently, last August during the Edinburgh Festival, I was busking with a song called the Loch Tay Boat Song. Mm-hmm. I just if I love the sound of a song, it doesn't really matter what genre it is or whether it fits in with. Not that I have a particular image that I want to portray. I just love music, that's all.
Is there any aspect of Scotland that you feel particularly that you relate to?
I love Achiltibuie. Up the northwest coast, all around there, I just think is magical. We used to go on holidays there, fortnight, and it was like taking life in the lay-by. You just go there and you're there for 2 weeks. Everything else stops. All your strains and stresses stop. It was on the coast. We knew a fisherman who lived there and would go out in the boat catching crabs and lobsters. I recently took my children up there. When I say recently, maybe about 5-6 years ago. They loved it as well, although they didn't get the best weather, but if you're lucky with the weather, it's just a bonus. But I love Scotland and I love the countryside. I love the people. I've got great neighbours all around here. And I think if you've got an attitude where you've decided that you're going to get on with people, you do, invariably. I think if you decide that you're going to get on with somebody, right, or you like them, or you show kindness to them, it's very difficult for them not to reciprocate that. But if you go in kind of nervy or like, I'm not sure about that, then you keep the division there longer.
Sure. So. And is there any aspects of the African and Ghanaian heritage that you particularly hold on to, particularly consciously know about, or is it a subconscious just there?
Yeah, I guess it's a subconscious thing. I don't make too much a thing about it because I think people are just more important than where they're from or borders or that kind of thing. So I treat everybody as individuals no matter where they're from. If they're nice, then great, we get on. Mm-hmm. If they're not, then we stay out of each other's way, or we make an effort. You know, it depends what the problem is, if there's a problem.
Sure.
Yeah.
And about your kind of family life now? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Family life. I love my family. I've got 3 wonderful children and a gorgeous wife, and we live here. We moved here from Leith, and we thought this was a sidestep. We thought we were going to move on to we've got our dream home. We've got it planned out. We've got it written on our, we've got a drawing of it on our wall in our kitchen. You might have seen it when you passed. I'd like to have a house that's got a sedum roof, you know, where it grows poppies and heather and grasses from it. I've got big ideas about having a masonry heater, which is like a stove, but it burns solid fuel really efficiently, wood. It has a secondary burner on it. I could go into that. I could show you drawings of it all, but I've got plans for that. Family life is good. You know, we look forward to going up the hills. We like to have treks, you know. We like to cycle. I like off-road cycling, especially. Coming downhill where it's quite treacherous, down scree slopes. I used to do that when I was wee, a lot of cycling. We love camping. All of us like camping. And I think the great thing is with camping, although at the time if the weather's not that great, you know, you dress for it, but when you come back home you really appreciate the roof over your head and the dryness. So we've all noticed that. So yeah, we get along really nicely. My middle daughter's in London at the moment. She's studying. My eldest daughter, she's in at the moment. She's finished her studies in Glasgow, so she's back. They're both musicians,
Right.
and I look so forward to having them here. Well, Nashika, she's a bit more easygoing about me, you know, being her father. It's not that easy being a studio engineer when you've got people who have got their own ideas about what they want.
Sure.
Because every time I think, right, okay, you're going to sing your songs, don't worry about the machines, I'll get your music done. If you've got ideas, let me know, you know, or they'll play whatever they want to play, and then they'll want me to kind of make it into something that's able to be, you know, balanced and mixed and mastered. Bonamy is quite, I don't want to say independent, but and also it's different. I don't want to compare Nashika and Bonamy. They've got very different talents. Bonamy's very creative and very spontaneous, and you've got to catch her in the right mood, right? And that in itself is really hard to do. Nashika, she'll come and she can more or less switch it on. She's got something prepared, and she'll come in here and she'll say, right, I want to record this, and I'll be obviously really excited because I've heard the demos. She puts them on SoundCloud, and it's like, you know, diamonds in the rough, really, really good sounds, but they're buried in kind of like, she uses a looper pedal, and she'll probably hate me for saying this, but she'll loop quite a lot, and then, you know, the more you loop, you kind of snowball with more and more sound, and you get a kind of feedbacky thing happening. She says it's all deliberate. But anyway, I hear the idea, and I can hear what she's getting at, and I'd just love to get her in the studio here so that I can record it on my equipment and put it out.
Have your feelings about Scotland changed over the years?
Not really, no. I mean, you mean with the politics?
Not necessarily, just in general.
No, well, I'm still here. I mean, my brother Nicky, he moved to France and then Switzerland. He went to Brazil as well, thinking he might settle there, because he kind of just, I think he just didn't feel like he really belonged here.
Right.
Doesn't feel the same. But for me, I feel quite at home in Scotland. Like I say, I love the northwest and beautiful countryside. Sometimes I feel I'd like to go somewhere warm and settle, because, you know, I sometimes feel like I want to get my muscles more relaxed. You know? But no, I'm quite happy where I am, and changes. People are more liberal than they used to be. And I think they're more used to seeing a darker face around. You know, it's not such a big deal as when I was young. It was a big thing. So yeah, it's all good.
And do you feel Scottish? Do you feel part of Scottish society?
Whenever I have to fill in a form or that, I usually write Scottish rather than British. I mean, I feel British as well, but Scottish primarily. Or, well, Afro-Scot.
Right.
But there's never a thing that says Afro-Scot. They say Afro-Caribbean, and they have all these different things, but I'd like to create the Afro-Scot one.
In general, do you feel like immigration has had a positive effect on Scotland?
I'd like to think so, yeah. I mean, there's a diversity that was never there before. Some people like that, some people don't. but I think most people who want to have new experiences in their lives appreciate that. So yeah, it's positive for me.
With the referendums that we've had over the last few years, with Scottish referendum on independence, the Brexit referendum, do you feel like things have changed drastically in the country, people's attitudes or anything like that?
No, I didn't really want to be roped into politics, but
you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
But
it's totally up to you.
You know what I said before about people being people, primarily, and I don't care what their persuasion is of any, their background. If they want to get on with you, they'll get on. I thought Scotland might do well being independent. I did. I voted for independence. Brexit, I'm not so sure, because there's all sorts of business implications and red tape, isn't there? Having said that, though, everybody's got their own. If they're in business, you'll make your contacts with whatever country you want to, doing it by the book, or doing it on wherever there's an obstacle, there's always a way around it. I don't want to sound like some kind of criminal, but politics is not my thing, though.
Sure.
I bowed out that a long time ago and stopped watching TV as well.
Right.
So it's like I'm in a bubble, but I'm not in a bubble. I do keep in touch with what goes on in the world, but I find that, I used to watch the news as a kind of almost like a religion. Every hour I'd turn up the radio, and it's just bad news all the time. Bad news, and why suffer it when you don't need to? So it's like not wearing a watch and not carrying a wallet. You feel freed up, much freer to let the music come in.
That's everything I have to say.
Brilliant.